Oh, John, you're on a countdown.
That wasn't in Polish, was it?
Yeah, it was. My mic's on. Everyone can pick it up. All right, we're good to go? Do you really want me to gavel? Do I have to? Oh, thanks. I don't want to gavel. I'm going to save that. This plexiglass prevents, from throwing it, though. All right. Welcome. I would like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the December 2nd, 2020 City Council meeting. A full gallery. I would like to begin the meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on Treaty 4 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda? I have Councillor Sakidniak. And I believe I need a seconder. Got it? Councillor Bresciani. All in concurrence, I think is the word you use. Thanks, folks. The next on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Sorry? I can hear him talking. I can't. I'm fine? Okay. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the City Council meeting held on October 28th, 2020? Councillor Shaw, a seconder? Oh, it has to be someone from existing. Thank you. Councillor Bresciani, may I have a seconder? Can she second it? Oh, it has to be someone from previous. Hi, thank you, Councillor Stevens. All in concurrence? 5 guys? All right. Next on the agenda, we will now consider item CMC 20-4, Official Statement of Results 2020 Municipal School Board Election. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor Hawkins, thank you. Seconder? I'll keep looking around. Councillor Stadnichuk. Any questions from members on the report?
Just ask me to make a couple comments.
Mr. Nicol, would you like to make a couple comments?
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I'd just like to bring to the attention of members 2 errors that were contained on this report. The first one, our sincere apologies to Councillor Mole. We inadvertently merged a document that took the former member from Ward 10. The record will be corrected for the minutes and the official record will be correct. We had your name on the announcement on Thursday the 12th. I'm not sure how this happened, but we apologize again sincerely. And with respect to the estimated voter turnout on November 9th, we inadvertently missed the calculation for Ward 6, the percentage there. Again, we will include that on the official record of the recordings of the meeting today. I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe it's 13% or something. It's all about in the same range, but the final minutes will be recorded to reflect both those revisions.
Any question from members? Go ahead.
Thank you. Just for the clerk, just because my husband was voted for the separate school board, would I remove myself or just abstain from voting?
I would respectfully say, Councillor Bresciani, that you don't have to do either.
Okay.
This is just a formal receipt of these. I don't think it would serve any purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, this is a receive and file, correct?
Yeah, but we just have to do the recorded vote now.
Sorry, say it again?
We just have to do the recorded vote now.
Okay, just the recorded vote. All in favor?
Yep, I do that.
You do that. Never
Sorry.
mind.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what's taking you so long, sir.
Councillor Hawkins, I will start with you as you move the motion, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you. think I realize what your notes say now. We will now consider bylaw 2020-67, the Regina zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw 2020, number 22, for third reading. Councillor Stevens, you'll do the third reading of the bylaw.
I move, seconded by Councillor Bresciani, that bylaw 2020-67 be read a third time.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm opposed to moving this bylaw for third reading. This is a bylaw about whether or not a temporary one-year parking lot should be built at the corner of Victoria and Albert. When considered in that light, there can hardly be a case for us building a temporary parking lot at this time in this city. There's a surplus of parking all through the city. The cost of building a parking lot would be significant and causes me to question whether, as a practical matter, the parking lot will be a temporary parking lot at all. It would look more like a permanent parking lot. And there's nothing in the court orders that requires us to build a temporary parking lot or any other parking lot at that space. We have virtually no other information in relation to this motion. There's no need to give third reading to this bylaw at this time. It may come a time at a later time when we have more information and the administration is in a position to brief us on that information, that we may want to make one of a number of decisions with respect to this property. But that is not now. Now there is simply no need for a parking lot, and indeed, there's a parking study coming to council in the first quarter of the new year, and we should not be taking actions with respect to parking lots until after we have seen that report. So I'm opposed to giving this third reading at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Stevens?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'd also like to speak opposed to this third reading of the bylaw. By every measure, I think we have sufficient parking downtown. When we canvassed the public and adjacent property owners, the response was resoundingly opposed. So currently, I see no reason to advance this. In excess, I believe, of a quarter of the footprint in the downtown is already surface parking. We also had property owners who we had lawyers representing property owners who manage surface parking make very clear that there's a surplus supply. So I think from a land use as well as from an economic perspective, there is little reason to support the addition of another surface parking lot in the downtown, and I would encourage other councillors to vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any other comment? Questions? Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see it a little bit differently. We did receive a letter from the Regina Town bid supporting this, also indicating that if it does come back, that it must come back in a year for our decision at that time to, if there is no development or discussions with administration regarding development, at that time, it's our right at that time to say no. So I do have a question for administration, though. I would like to know if this does move forward, what will be paid to the city and when? Through the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mayor Masters, so the court order requires that if a real estate transaction is completed, that the city of Regina is paid first. What I can tell you is that the outstanding taxes as of the most recent time that we pulled the records are approximately 2.8 million. I just asked Mr. Weary if he has anything further in terms of direct language in the court order.
Mr. Weary?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no direct language related to this particular decision in the court order.
I'm still on. Thank you. So, so what we've heard is that the Regina taxpayers will see their money that we had to put in to fill that hole in. That will come back to the city of Regina after this deal goes through in January at some time. And again, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the response, but we're going to be ensured that this money will come back to the city of Regina. Through the chair.
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Madam Masters, the court order requires that the city be paid its back taxes. Councillor Hawkins and Mr. Weary are correct in reinforcing that the approval of a parking lot is not a part of the court order. That's a separate part of a business transaction. So upon sale, the outstanding taxes that are owed, it's in the court order that the city be paid back the outstanding taxes.
Good. I think just the last piece there in this regard is I understand that I would ask that administration, as they're moving forward in this contract, for this contract zone, that there be discussion with this developer that that's the intent of council, that we do not want to have another parking lot downtown. And if that can be made clear that it comes back in 1 year, if that is the consideration in that time frame, that it could be denied. So that's the conversation that has to be, but I will be supporting it to move forward, because I think this land will sit vacant, or could sit vacant for many, many more years. And I think if we have someone that's interested, we should move that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shaw?
I just feel that if this doesn't go through, has it been, I mean, since we're new to this, is there any other option?
Thanks. Councillor LeBlanc?
Yeah, I would speak against the motion. As far as I can tell, those who have spoken in favor of it don't so much say that it's a good idea as that it's a bad idea, which will only last for a year. I think that's a bad basis on which to make a decision, and I think, as Councillors Hawkins and Stevens have pointed out, we don't need it now. I don't think we're in a position where it's so urgent to fill this that we have to put it to a bad land use for a year. We can wait for a land use that fits with our community plan. So I'll be opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. I apologize. Mr. Holden, you wish to comment on Councillor Shaw's comment?
So through you, Mayor Masters, the question was, if we don't proceed with this, what are the options? Again, this was a request of a proponent. Right now, that proponent does not own the site, and there is no development proposal in front of council. That would come at a later date. So the only other, if a real estate transaction is not completed on this site, then it stays with the original owner. And of course, the taxes would remain outstanding. And at that point, the city would start to take action to take ownership of that land through legislative processes as a result of the taxes not being paid.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli?
Just a comment, I guess. I really want to vote yes for this in our current financial situation. The money sounds really attractive, but prior to council, I witnessed that corner and plans that weren't properly funded and what they lead to. And with the amount of information divulged and things in the air, I just can't put things on this corner on a matter of trust. So I think I have to go against it.
Councillor Pendura?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to give a little bit of a summary, previous, I was one of the three that voted against the parking lot. It's the circumstances at the time and what we wanted to see, and the downtown plan or parking lot. We get a lot of stuff coming into us in the new year. The parking master plan or parking policy. But I'm thinking about today is about passing or not passing, or not permitting or permitting to rezone or to zone to allow parking lot. is, within the plan, is this, the word I'm looking for, permitted use? To your worship?
Thank you. Ms. Harlock?
Thank you, Mayor. So no, it is not a permitted use in the downtown plan. It does not permit surface parking lots. That's why it's being brought forward as a direct control district with the time frame on it. We've done that in the past. We've had 2 other instances where we have allowed temporary parking lots, and this is the mechanism upon which they can apply for that.
Okay, thank you. In light of what's come up and what I see, and I heard the word trust, I didn't have that trust from previous, but I think I feel that I need to put a little bit of a trust going forward. If we don't trust that it's going to happen, I am one of the original people that were involved with this 10 years ago, whatever it was. So I would like to see it move forward, get out of that hole, instead of going back into the hole. For that reason, I am going to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Mole?
I don't know the exact number, $140,000 of owed property tax. How many years does that go back to reach that tally?
Do we know that, sir?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Mayor. So the total balance, as Mr. Holden indicated, outstanding on the taxes is $2.8 million. So it was back in 2018 where taxes weren't paid and penalties started to be charged to that property with respect to unpaid taxes. That $2.8 million, as Mr. Holden indicated, includes property taxes not paid since then, the cost of backfilling the hole there for public safety reasons, and then as well as various interest and penalty charges that were charged pursuant to council bylaw and legislation.
Councillor Mole, do you have further comment? You're good? Any further comment? Oh, no. No. But I don't have to. Mr. Deputy Mayor? I think I already turned my own mic on. Through you, Chair. Chris, can you give, so this has passed through council twice already, and the approach that the developer has taken is that they would just like a temporary parking lot while they go through a building proposal, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So that was their presentation to council when this report first was brought forward, is they intend to pursue a development. As of right now, they do not have a development plan. We've never been privy to any formal discussions, and because they don't own the property. Until they own the property, they're not in a position to actually propose their development. But what they've said is, for us to be able to, I guess, make the transaction financially viable for them, they would like to have some flexibility to have a temporary parking surface for 1 year.
This may be past the purview of what you've done, but how much income could they earn on that site from a parking lot?
Mr. Holden.
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I mean, that is a question that really only they can answer. I mean, we are in COVID. There's a lot of people that are working from home. There's an abundance of parking in the downtown right now in terms of just on-street parking. We know that from our own, metered enforcement. And, if you just look around the downtown, there are lots of spaces available. So I think, that's their business decision. Obviously, they feel that it's it's worthwhile making the investment to recover some of their investment that they're going to put forward while they wait to bring their development proposal forward.
And it would probably be in their best interest, do you think, in terms of a $2.9 million purchase price? Again, I'm not sure if Ms. Howrelick would know how many parking spots you could fit or if you could even fill them, but.
Mr. Holden or Ms. Harley?
I think Ms. Howrelick.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, I'm just trying to find the number of parking stalls. I don't have that exact number, but it is a significant amount on that lot that they'd be able to put into place for 1 year.
Okay. Thank you. I guess 2 previous councils have passed this motion. This is the 3rd reading for temporary parking. 12 months from now, you could deny the use again, my understanding is. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stadnichuk?
Thank you. I am quite concerned about the appropriate land use of this property. It is in the center of the city. It's two key roads that go past this property. And we already have, as people have mentioned, other councillors have mentioned, quite a high number of surface parking downtown. In Saskatoon, it's called the City of Bridges, and I don't want Regina to be known as the City of Parking Lots. I'd like to see appropriate development on that spot, and I don't believe that it is necessary to approve this temporary use of a parking lot. I think it's a slippery slope. There's been a number of other temporary parking lots that have gone on to last more than 1 year or 2 years. So I am opposed to this.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Councillor Mole.
Just for some information for everybody here, me and a couple other councillors gave Robert Goldman a call before coming in here.
Oh, I apologize. Councillor Mole. Apparently you're only allowed to speak once. At council, sorry. Executive, you get to have fun. Thank you, Councillor. And Jim. Yeah. Anyone else? I don't believe so. All right. I will leave it to Mr. Nicol to call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I will start with you, Councillor Stevens, please.
Opposed?
Councillor Hawkins?
Opposed?
Councillor Stadnichuk?
Opposed?
Councillor Mole?
In favor?
Councillor Mancinelli?
I'm in favor.
Councillor Zahidniak?
Opposed?
Councillor Shaw?
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Opposed.
Councillor Findura?
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani?
In favor?
Mayor Masters?
In favor.
Passes 6-5. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is committee reports. We will now consider item CR 20-93, 2020 Committee Structure Review from Executive Committee. Councillor Stevens, can you introduce the report, please? Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get there. There you go.
Okay, thank you. This is the 2020 committee review structure. I'll need a seconder, please. Thank you. The outline here is pretty straightforward. It adjusts the Priorities and Planning Committee to be disestablished and its responsibilities be transferred to the Executive Committee. The Finance Administration Committee be disestablished and its responsibilities and delegated authorities be transferred to Executive. That a new committee of council, the Operations and Community Services Committee, comprised of 5 councillors, be established from the disestablishment of, transfer of, the respective responsibilities and delegated authorities as outlined in Appendix B. That the main committees of City Council be confirmed as follows: Operations and Community Services, Executive Committee, Mayor's Housing Commission, Regina Planning Commission directs the city clerk to prepare a report respecting the membership on the Regina Appeals Board, directs the city solicitor to make the necessary amendments to the procedure bylaw number 9004, administrative bylaw number 2003-69, the committee bylaw number 2009-40. Through your worship, I believe the Mayor's Housing Commission has been replaced. Is this a technical issue we can sort out with some wordsmithing here?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Masters. Yes, Councillor Stevens, that is, in fact, the Mayor's Housing Commission will be removed. Item F says that. It's just a bit of clumsy wording on our part. So yes, the bylaws that are being prepared by legal will have the Mayor's Housing Commission disestablished and the new committee brought on board.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, that was a technical overview of what this report contains. Does administration want to add anything in terms of the scope and significance of these changes and what we're approving here, please?
Mr. Holden?
So through you, Mayor Masters, the recommendations that have been put in front of you are recommendations based on the experience of the previous council and the fact that, I think the complexities of the issues that council has to deal with are ever increasing. And what we were finding is that we were being crammed on agendas. We weren't getting time to give some of the critical issues that are being put in front of council for discussion and decision. We just weren't getting the attention of that. So we believe that with the amalgamation of some committees, the establishment of the new community wellness committee, and of course the elimination of the planning and priorities, going to 2 executive committees and 2 council meetings a month, that we'll be better positioned administratively to support you in terms of bringing important reports, recommendations to you, and making sure that you have ample time to deliberate and make decisions that are in the best interest of our community.
Councillor Stevens?
I'd like to make an amendment to the report. I believe the city clerk does have the written amendment. And after I read it, I'll ask council for a seconder. The additional amendment or addition to this report would read that the requirement for council delegates to submit a written statement be removed from the procedure bylaw. So before I provide a rationale for this, I just need a seconder.
Councillor Mancinelli? Thank you.
Through the chair. The purpose to this is to actually make council more accessible. So just for clarification, what will happen currently is by a certain deadline, members of the public who wish to speak to a report or a particular issue, a motion that comes before council, are required to submit a written statement. They are not required when they come to council to read verbatim that statement, but it is a requirement nonetheless. I've had on occasion had to deal with residents who have intellectual disabilities, really wanted to speak. I've done my best to meet deadlines to actually work with them to craft a written statement. I believe this is an unnecessary obstacle for many reasons. A lot of people miss the deadline. It's an additional challenge. Instead, what would happen is they would simply need to signal to the city clerk that they wish to come to speak to a particular issue. They'd be put on the agenda. They just wouldn't be required to submit anything written. That's currently the format for our committee structures. It works fine. In fact, personally, I kind of like the spontaneity of people coming forward. Currently, it is nice to have something written, but they can deviate from it, and you feel like there's a bit of a redundancy already spending time reading a report, to have them read it. If there's no questions, it all seems a bit of a waste of time. This, I think, would also alleviate some of the burden on the city clerk's office and the onus of needing to meet strict deadlines, which we seem to be adhering to, would kind of be waived by the suspension of this requirement. So I look forward to what council has to say about this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Floor is now open for discussion between the members. Councillor Findura?
Thank you, to your worship. Questions of administration. Then anyone who wants to speak to council, then they would be instructed to discuss only the topic that's on the agenda. What happens if someone brings something different and deviates? I know that the mayor can call our order. Is that going to cause some difficulties in managing the time or managing the issues? I think comments were made before that I'm just going to make a comment that they can still write something to the city, so at least the council will know what is it that they want to say. Or if we just want to leave it alone and them come over here and speak their mind in that sense. So my question would be, how do we manage that? If there's no written, how are we going to manage that?
Thank you, Council Fundura. I'll have Mr. Nicol answer the question.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Council Fundura, what it would be really no different in terms of the responsibilities of the chair of any particular meeting to ensure that the delegation remains on topic. So, as Councillor Stevens explained, and as I understand his motion, what it would mean would be that an individual would write into my office by a particular deadline, just indicating that they will be present to speak to council. And if they are speaking on a particular issue, whatever that issue might be, if it's about a road closure, for example, then their comments would be restricted to the road closure, and it would be no different than if there was a written submission. It is incumbent on the chair to ensure that they stay on the topic.
Councilor Fundura?
Okay. Thank you for that, Your Worship. If my understanding is clear that there will still be, because I don't know if I heard that from Councillor Stevens, they still will have to indicate that they want to come to council. At the committee meetings, anyone just can come up here and sign a little note saying that they want to speak. But at council, they're still going to have to provide something to the clerk's office to be here and speak, but not with notes. So they will not have to do a submission of a written letter, but we will know who's here. Am I correct?
Mr. Nicol, please go ahead.
Yes, that's, Mayor Masters, that's correct, Councillor Fundura. What would be required at council would be nothing more than an individual submitting an email or a letter to my office with their contact information indicating that they wish to speak to a particular item, and then they would be listed on the agenda as being listed to address council, but they would not have to submit anything else. But we would still need to know who had planned to speak. It's much looser at committees when people can sign up 15 minutes prior to the meeting starting. So there would still be a bit of a regimen there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nicol.
Thank you.
Council Stadenchuk?
Thank you. I'm wondering, I just want a clarification. So this would not preclude someone from making a written submission to council, but so if in that case, I'm just wondering if there would be any requirements for those that do have written submissions, especially if they're lengthy, if they can be submitted in advance. Just because it would be nice for council to be able to have a chance to at least, read through them.
Thank you, Council. Jim, do you want to comment? Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I think that it would likely be appropriate to keep that flexibility, Councillor Stadnichuk. I can tell you that from my experience, most delegations, what they submit is largely their speaking notes. We do have the, delegation once or every so often who might have a much more detailed document that they wish to share with council, and we could certainly share that, and then it becomes part of the record. But I think, in fairness, from my history and experience, most people, I think, will be quite happy if this was waived, because they do find it sometimes either onerous or repetitive, or they would rather just come and speak. But again, that's just my anecdotal evidence on that.
Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you. There's an advantage to councillors to be able to get something in written form. And that is so you can prepare yourself to read through. So when they do come, you can ask those questions to the delegation. That's one benefit. The other benefit is that it's on record and it's there. And you can have time to consume it. Sometimes when you have to write a letter, it's factual, and you can go back. But I guess the other thing is, if it's the deadline that's the issue, I don't know if that's one of the concerns, but I mean, if it's that then we could take away the deadline piece, if that's, because there obviously would be no deadline in this then. We would not need a deadline because anybody can just show up. But I see a benefit in this. Now, I just would like to know from administration, what are your thoughts on this? And do we know of any other municipality that does this?
Mr. Holden?
Through the chair.
So through you, Mayor Masters, I think a number of councillors have indicated that there is a benefit of seeing the written delegations beforehand. It allows the administration actually to review the delegations and, prepare responses for questions that we're going to be asked, by council on behalf of the delegations in terms of what they hear. So I think there is definitely a benefit. There are municipalities that only allow delegations at their committee meetings and they don't allow any delegation at their council meetings. Often we hear from the same groups twice. We hear at committee and we hear at council. That would be a consideration, obviously, for council. The time piece in terms of having a deadline, if people are submitting written delegations, obviously, there's a requirement for us to prepare that material and get it loaded as a part of the agenda package. So we do prefer a deadline. But if it was simply to say that, written submissions are encouraged, but there's no longer a requirement so that somebody could, at the last minute, see an item on the council agenda and come forward. I'm not aware, and Mr. Nicol may have more information in terms of just the procedures from other cities as to whether or not they're requiring written submissions or not. I think it is quite flexible across the country. It's whatever works best for the individual council.
Thank you. Mr. Nicol?
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with the city manager that it is quite diverse across the country. Again, some of the larger cities do not have delegations at council. It's only at committees. It is my understanding, however, and I would have to confirm this, but I believe that Saskatoon follows a similar practice to what Councillor Stevens is putting forward, that they do not require written delegations anymore. They just have a sign-up procedure 2 or 3 days or by 11 o'clock of that morning. Theirs is relatively much more fluid in that regard than ours. But in fairness, I do have to confirm that, but that's how it was working.
Thank you. Councillor Bresciani, do you have
Thank
further
you.
comment?
Can I ask Councillor Stevens, are you aware if Saskatoon does that? Through the chair?
Councillor Stevens?
I had heard anecdotally, but I had never looked into it, and it's not the driver behind the motion. But I do know that there are councils, and some who have experience in other municipalities thought it strange that Regina required this. This was simply about having council more accessible and easier for people to access us. That was my intention.
So through the chair, can I ask Mr. Nicol, has there been some concern from residents that said, if I don't have to write something, I would rather come and speak rather than doing all of the writing? Like, is that, because at the end of the day, I think as a council, we want to see the most people here. We want to see if it's going to be writing something, hearing something. At the end of the day, from your experience, I'm sure we don't have stats, but through the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Nicol?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, based on experience and only anecdotal evidence, Councillor Bresciani, part of the reasons that some people will say, oh, I would have liked to come, but I don't have time, or I'm just not someone who wants to write a document. They say, why did I have to write something for council? I didn't have to when I was at executive committee or RPC last week. So I wouldn't say they're concerns, they're more just comments that are raised as to why we were requiring something else at the level of council when we didn't for a committee.
Okay. And I guess the last question through this, Councillor Stevens, are you indicating that people would still come, can still submit both, allow the in-writing option would be there as well, and either one?
Okay. Councillor Stevens?
Through the chair, that's correct. So it's just suspending the mandatory requirement. So my intention here is you would still have to signal by the same deadline you wish to speak at council, period. And that would be it. You're not required to submit something. We could even say we encourage people to do it. I think we all know there are some folks who come routinely. They will submit 20-page documents. They will still read for 5. I don't think those folks will change. This would simply say there's the same deadline, but you can choose whether or not you want to submit a written statement.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
I just have a question. If we just allow people to just show up, would there be a amount of people that we could see? Would that be an unlimited number? And my feeling is if you're passionate about something and if you want to address City Council, I'm sure that you can take the 15 minutes to write us a short little email addressing just the key points that you want to discuss, so then we're kind of aware and we have a heads up as to what you'd like to talk about. But
Thank you. Mr. Nicol, do you want to address the question within there?
Well, what I can only really speak to the submission part of it is, and again, it doesn't, some people want to do it, some don't. We will work with whatever council wishes to do. With respect to, again, the differences that in terms of numbers, you never know when you come into a committee meeting, whether that be executive or the planning commission, you don't know until you come into the chambers how many delegations you may have. My office might get a sense if people are phoning in, but typically for committees, the only notice is you have to sign in when you come in 15 minutes prior to the meeting. By requiring delegations to still at least send in their name and contact number, we would at least have a sense that, prepare yourself, there are 14 delegations on item 1 and 2 on item 3. And at some point, which we have seen before, sometimes at budget, certainly with respect to some previous council decisions that were taken in the last term, where we've had upwards of 20 or 30 delegations, those typically will automatically require us to give some thought to holding a second meeting or recessing to another time. So as long as we get something, we have at least an idea of what the magnitude of the numbers might be.
Thank you. Councillor Sakidniak?
I like the wording where written submissions are encouraged but not mandatory. So I'm in support of that change. I don't know if that requires any sort of friendly amendment or if that can be part of the wording in this amendment.
Mr. Nicol?
We can take that, Councillor Zahidniak. I think if this was to pass, we would make sure that that wording is reflected in the approved minute, because I believe we understand the intent of what your comments are, as well as Councillor Stevens.
Great, thanks.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Nicol, can I get you to do the call?
With respect to the amendment moved by Councillor Stevens, I will start with Councillor Stevens, please.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
opposed.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moule.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
The amendment passes 10-1. Mayor? Now you're back to the main motion.
Now we're back to the main motion, sir.
I have nothing else to add.
You have nothing else to add. So the floor is open for discussion on the main motion, the committee structure review for executive committee, correct? Am I on the right motion? Okay.
We're
Super.
still on it.
Any comment? Councillor LeBlanc?
I would just put forward a second motion. Pardon me, I'm new to the procedure. It is in the two areas, so to His Worship the Mayor and member of City Council. I would move we change that to Her Worship the Mayor, and so on.
That was an oversight on a template that's been long-standing, Councillor. That was fixed this morning.
Okay.
So future reports will say Mayor Masters and councillors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor LeBlanc.
No, it won't be her worship. She wants to be Mayor Masters.
Any further comment or question
No
about
more.
the committee
No more.
structure
Her
review
worship.
for executive committee? Seeing none, can I have you do the call?
On the main motion as amended, again, I will start with you, Councillor Stevens, as you move the motion. Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Passes unanimously, Mayor Masters.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we will consider item CR 20-94, 2021 City Council and Committee Meeting Calendar from Executive Committee. Councillor Stevens, can you introduce the report, please?
Thank you. Through the chair, this is pretty straightforward from a lengthy discussion at Executive Committee. I seek a seconder to start things off. Councillor Mancinelli. All right. So what we're approving here is the calendar for 2021. And these are some of the big changes, I think, that are worth flagging to the public. That City Council meet every second Wednesday at 1 p.m., except during July and August. Executive meet every second Wednesday at 9 a.m. on alternating weeks. Regina Planning Commission to meet once per month on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Community Services and Operations meet once per month on Wednesday at 2. Recesses and adjournment for council and committee meetings be adjusted to reflect the new timings. Public release of meeting materials will remain on the Friday afternoon immediately preceding the committee or council meeting. The deadline, with no exceptions, for written delegation submissions to City Council will be noon on the Monday preceding the council meeting, and direct the city solicitor to make the appropriate changes to the various bylaws. Again, if we're going to flag the significance here, it's that council, as has become apparent to many people, is tasked with more and more work, as I've seen over the last 4 years. So this is now going to have us meet twice a month effectively, and twice a month for executive committee. Does the city clerk have anything else to add in terms of what's in this report?
Mr. Nicol?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I think you covered it quite well, Councillor Stevens. I think it's just worth noting that on the other alternating week on Wednesdays will be the new Community Wellness and Community Health and Wellbeing Committee. So I have no further comments, Mayor.
Thank you. The floor is open for questions. Councillor Findura.
I'm not going to get tripped on the change of the word. So Mayor Masters, through you, if I can add comments. I'm looking forward to seeing this every second Wednesday meeting twice a month on the council and executive. I believe this will give us a little bit of quicker turnaround on issues that we're dealing with, and a lot of things that would come. A lot of times we would have to move the meeting, find another date. It just becomes a logistical nightmare. So this way, I know the administration can plan, get the amount of work on the agenda we can actually finish and get the good work done. So yeah, but it's Wednesdays, right? So like I know from here on, every Wednesday I'm here. Or if it happens that we're going to go to Zoom or whatever you want to call it, but it's Wednesdays, so it works. I'm looking forward to it. I'm voting in favor of this. This is a great idea. It's going to give us a lot of good work, and we can finish our projects and without postponing things. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you through the chair. I think that moving this forward, I know Councillor Mancinelli brought this forward a couple of years ago when we looked at the schedule, and it was his motion that brought us to the 1 day because many people were working and it was very hard to try and take every day and try and make, and there's other subcommittees other than these ones we see here. So, but these are the key ones. So I think it's really good. I think the meetings, again, when you're going 8 hours long, and in some of our meetings we're into close to midnight, again, you're not making the best decisions. It's way too long. So I think we're going to see those committee meetings shorter, as well as I think getting items, generating them quicker for administration as well, to getting them through, because I know there's a long list there. One of the questions that I do have, though, is what would be the mandate, though, if they do go too long, like if they overlap? Is there a time that we would have to, because we've got executive, which is going to be happening, and then the Regina Planning Commission. And same with the other one is executive, and then also operations and community services. Is there a time that has to end that? So if it doesn't finish, anything in the guidelines there through the chair?
Thank you, Lori. Councillor Bresciani. Mr. Nicol.
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to your question, Councillor Bresciani, if you look at, I think it's recommendation E, talks about the recesses and adjournments for meetings will adjust the new starting times. So what that means is they will still adjourn after 4.5 hours unless there is a motion to continue. So, for example, that's why executive committee starts at 9 in the morning, because that way it can be done, it would be done by 1:30, leaving enough time to get ready for the planning commission. So the recesses of 2 hours and 15 minutes for the mandatory breaks and the adjournment after 4.5 hours remain unchanged from before.
Okay, great. Can I just ask, in regards to the operations and community service time meeting at 2, was there any consideration just moving that to 4 o'clock, so to keep all those committees at the same time? Or was that deemed because there's no public sitting on those, on that committee? Through the chair?
Mayor, through you, Mayor, I think that's a fair assessment, Councillor Bresciani, that there was nothing magical. It could be 4 o'clock, but again, it's on a Wednesday. That committee is only council members, so we figured was there a reason that it couldn't start earlier, and that was why 2 o'clock was chosen. But there was nothing magical or structural about that. It was just at 2 o'clock because it was 5 council members.
Okay. And just the last question, if this, say, if planning is quite heavy, because it is a heavy portfolio, and then executive, if councillors feel it's too heavy, when would this be able to come back to committee to look at adjusting the time or the date? Through the chair? Thank you.
At any time during the year, council, a motion could be brought forward to council requesting that this be revised to accommodate some need or a backlog or whatever the case may be. So this is what is essentially established for 2021, pending some other motion that might come before council to revise it.
Okay. I guess the only, I am considering a motion regarding the Operations and Community Service Committee to go to 4 o'clock. The only reason I'm saying that is because I know as councillors we sit on there, but we also have to engage the residents, and there's going to be people that will want to come to speak to that committee. And now that we're bringing both committees together, we may have delegations that want to come. And to me, it's more important, I know it's our schedule, but it's more important that they will not have to take work off or as much time to come and speak. So if I can make that motion that Operations and Community Service Committee be the same as Mayor's Housing and Regina Planning and start at 4. And this way, again, it's just so that we can have the general public, if they would like to come and speak at those committees, which we do get.
Councillor Bresciani has a motion on the floor to move the Community Services and Operations Committee from 2 p.m. as outlined in your agendas to 4 p.m. She needs a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Anyone like to comment on the amendment? Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm opposed to this motion. My feeling is that there's some merit and consistency here with the other committees meeting at 2 p.m., with the only exception being if there's members of the committee who aren't councillors. We've had this discussion before in other contexts. Some people will be available in the afternoon, some people will be available in the evening. There's no magic time in which everybody is going to be available. That's my first point. My second point is that this is a committee meeting. If someone wasn't available, they would certainly be welcome to try and come to a city council. My third point is that we have had afternoon meetings of council, and we found that people who are anxious to speak to council are able to get to council in the day. So I think for those reasons, it doesn't make much sense to disrupt the structure that's been put in place here. There is a safeguard here, though. If I'm wrong, we'll review this at the end of the year, and it's possible that we would, if we found out there was a large number of people who wanted to speak to the operations committee and couldn't get here, that we could make a change at that time. But my feeling is that this is a very coherent structure. It's a structure that makes sense, and we should give it a try at least. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, can I get a call on the motion?
With respect to the amendment, I'll begin with you, Councillor Bresciani, please.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Opposed.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
Opposed.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Opposed.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
Opposed?
Councillor Hawkins.
Opposed?
Councillor Stevens.
Opposed.
Mayor Masters.
Opposed.
It is defeated 4-7. Mayor Masters.
Going back to the original motion relative to committee structure review from executive committee, any more discussion? I believe Councillor LeBlanc, you, go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment on point 1 sub G of that in light of the amendment passed to the last matter by Councillor Stevens. So this reads, the deadline with no exceptions for written delegation submissions to City Council and so on. Just a comment to the city solicitor that, as I understand the implication of the past, is to make that for all delegations, whether written or oral.
Mr. Nicol?
That's correct, Councillor.
Seeing no further comments, would it be approve a motion as amended? Okay.
Actually, no, it wasn't, because it wasn't passed.
Nope.
There was no.
No, but just in terms of how it's written, the written delegation piece, which I think Councillor LeBlanc was raising on
Take that as friendly.
friendly, but okay, it'll be changed in terms of language. Then, what we have now is please, you do the call for the vote.
With respect to the main motion, Councillor Stevens.
Please. Councillor Hawkins.
In favor?
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor?
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor?
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Mole.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously. Mayor?
Thank you. We will now consider CR 20-95, 2021 elected official committee appointments from executive committee. Councillor Stevens, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you. Through the chair. First off, I'll need a seconder, please.
Councillor Stadnichuk?
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a Kidniak. I apologize.
We'll deal with that later.
I think it's the number of syllables, maybe. Please, sir.
Through the chair, this one's also pretty straightforward. We recall we duked this one out for quite a while later last month. This is simply our appointment on the various council committees. I understand that the clerk will need to make some additions to the Regina Appeals Board. Am I correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Stevens, I will be preparing a report for consideration at Executive Committee on Wednesday, respecting what we hope will be interim appointments to the Regina Appeal Board, as well as seeking direction from City Council as to how you want to go about appointing a deputy mayor, whether that's on a rotational basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly, as well as a couple of other administrative reports or appointments that are required as a result of the amalgamation of committees.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, we're not dealing with this in this report. That will come
That's right.
forward. Thank you. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you. Floor is now open for discussion between members. Any questions? All right, folks, seeing none, can I get a call to vote? Oh, apologies. All right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just do have a question in regards to the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Like, where will these fit in when they're, we also had the Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I know we did bring a motion as far as age-friendly Regina and how those will fit in. We also talked about the Real Board, Regina Economic Development. Those are a few. When will that discussion happen for those advisory committees? Through the chair?
Thank you, Mayor. I expect Councilor Bresciani that we'll bring another report forward in Q1 of 2021, because the appointments that we're talking now are more of your internal appointments that we need to get some timely people on them. Not that it doesn't, I'm not suggesting the others aren't timely, but we need a bit of more time to pull those together. And we're still doing a bit of work on terms of reference in that.
Okay. Q1, Q1?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Holden, I think, has.
Mr. Holden.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So there will be a report at Exec Committee that speaks to our municipal corporations, EDR, et cetera, in terms of board and board appointments. So there'll be a conversation about that. And to Mr. Nichols' point, the energy and sustainability is a part of our plan coming forward. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee that was asked the administration to review will bring reports forward on those in terms of reference, et cetera. So those will come in Q1 of 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, can the administration advise what the current representation status is of councillor members on EDR and Riel? And is there some change contemplated in that? And if so, why?
Mr. Holden?
So through your Masters, so currently on the EDR board, there is a council appointment, non-voting member, and that has been the mayor for as long as I can remember. And that will be a discussion point when we bring the report to Exec Committee. I also, and then I sit on the EDR board as an observer. That was a recent addition in terms of EDR's bylaws. And of course, I observe, I don't have a vote. And then of course, in Real, the city manager has always been an appointed ex officio to that board. So the report that you'll see next Wednesday has a conversation about our municipal corporations, which is EDR, Real, and the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plant. So you'll see a report on Wednesday that has some background discussion and recommendations on the involvement of council on those boards.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comment or question? Seeing none. Now, Mr. Nicol.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Stevens, please. In favor. Councillor Moore.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor?
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you. We are now into the city manager's report, item CM 20-33. The first item on the list, I believe, is the municipal revenue sharing eligibility criteria. Can I have someone move and second the report, please? Mover, Councilman Hawkins. Seconder, Councilor Bresciani. Mr. Holden, can you provide an overview, please, and thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Master. So this is a report that just outlines our eligibility requirements to receive our municipal revenue sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lacey to just go through the report.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So the province has a municipal revenue sharing grant program, and essentially that program pools 0.75% of PST the province collected in the previous 2 years ago. And then municipalities receive funding out of that pool, including the city of Regina. To be eligible for that funding, and as a condition of that receiving that funding, the city must meet certain conditions that are outlined in the report. As well, the program requires council basically through a resolution to verify that those conditions are met. So that's the report in front of you, and administration does confirm that all of those conditions have been met.
Thank you. The floor is now open for comment or question. Anything from council? Seeing none, we call the question on this one. So this is a motion to receive and file.
Councillor Hawkins,
In favor?
Councillor Stadnicek,
In favor?
Councillor Stevens,
In favor?
Councillor Bresciani, Councillor Findura,
In favor?
Councillor LeBlanc,
In favor.
Councillor Shaw,
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
Councillor Moore,
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, folks. We'll now consider items still under the city manager's update. This is item CM 20-34, a COVID-19 update. Can I have someone move and second receiving and filing this report? I have Councillor Mancinelli and a seconder. Councillor Stevens, thank you very much. Mr. Holden, sorry, I'll call you your right name. Would you like to report?
Thank you, Mayor Masters. So the report in front of you this afternoon is our COVID-19 update report. Ever since the health pandemic was declared, obviously we have had to respond as a city. There has been changes to health orders. There was the introduction of the Reopen Saskatchewan plan. And of course, we've made adjustments to our operations. We've made adjustments to our communications in order to be able to follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer and the province of Saskatchewan. And if you look just in the decision history of the report, we have come forward on a regular basis in terms of providing updates to council. There is some delegated authority to the city manager in a number of areas so that we can be responsive and take immediate action to respond. There are other times when we need to come in front of council because there isn't delegated authority to the administration and we need to come in front of you for approval of decisions. So we've appeared numerous times and today is just another update to let the public know what the city is doing in terms of responding to those health orders and to the changes in the Reopen Saskatchewan plan. At the city, we have a principle of one city, one team. We come together and we try to, remove those silos that municipalities often get accused of having. And I think the way that the city has dealt with COVID-19, reacted to COVID-19, it has been an all-team effort across our entire organization. So the update this afternoon, I'm going to play a little bit of quarterback and give each of the EDs an opportunity to just speak momentarily to the work that their teams have done. So I'm going to start with Mr. Onright, and he's going to speak quickly to our emergency management response, and then, of course, to the changes that we've made in transit.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Mr. Onright?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So the Emergency Management Committee continues to get information from our emergency management team. We are in daily conversations with SHA, and we also meet 3 times a week virtually with the provincial group. So we are well informed from SHA, what they are actually seeing and trying to predict moving forward, which influences some of the decision making internally for our operations teams and specifically to our emergency operating committee. In regards to transit, we have had our mask compliance is still hovering right around 100%. We're in the 99.5% range. We've had excellent uptake. Riders are very compliant. We have only had one case where we have had one of our riders refuse to wear a mask and they were asked to leave. So we are very pleased with what we're seeing there. Across the country, we are in communication with other properties across Canada, and that is through our CUDOR, Canadian Urban Transit Association. And in a meeting as of late, so 2 days ago, they are seeing a drop in ridership, and we are seeing a drop in ridership also. of about 18% over the last 2.5 weeks. So we continue to monitor transit. We know it's an essential service. Continue to look at the ridership, and we'll adjust as necessary as we move forward. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Unright. So I now ask Ms. Hurlick to speak to the changes that we put in place around our recreation services, but also some of the work that we've done in terms of mobilizing the community in terms of providing social services.
To you, Mayor Masters. So with the new parameters that were set out by the province on November 27th, we've had to adjust our recreational facilities and services. So at the field house, all adult user group activities are canceled. We have to reduce our fitness classes down to 8 participants, and there is no badminton or tennis allowed, but we do have the opportunity for youth practices for conditioning and skills training, and that's for all of our facilities when there's youth and skills training. So again, the same thing with all of our arenas. We are trying to assess how best to manage the public skate program with masking and distancing requirements. So we're working on that right now so that we can allow public skates. For the pools, again, same things with the adults and the youth groups, but the one thing is we have paused this sessions of swimming lessons until the end of this session, which is December 4th. And then we're going to explore how we can deliver this program in the future, keeping in mind the regulations that have been put down by the province. And then again, neighborhood centers, again, it's all the same things with the user groups and those sorts of things. What we are doing is for outdoor programs and facilities, we have developed a winter programming initiative where we're working with the community to deliver more outside winter activities through dedicated grant funding. So we are administrating $25,000 grant program, so grants between $500 to $5,000 to groups to fund outdoor winter activities. We're also providing additional sport and recreation opportunities through rinks. So our outdoor rinks and shelters, 34 in total. We're providing more money and supervision grant funding to community associations so that they can actually have more supervision on those, so that we have that ability for people to get out into the community more, doing things outdoors. We have more outdoor winter programming that we're going to be doing that we typically wouldn't have done in order to get people out, such as family snowshoeing, touchless geocaching, and snow sculpting. And we're partnering with organizations such as local curling clubs and Buffalo People Arts Institute on outdoor storytelling initiatives. We're also doing therapeutic recreation, one-of-a-kind therapeutic recreation pilot program in partnership with Eden Care to encourage our adults and seniors who have been socially isolated to get out during this time. We also are working very closely with all of our partners, working with our vulnerable populations. We've been working since the onset of COVID with these groups. We're continuing to work with the groups on the cold winter strategy. We actually just got a proposal from the Aboriginal Network to talk about it was the All Nations Hope Network, to look at partnerships for warming up during the day and spaces for night. So we're in partnership with them, coming up with that program to meet the needs of that population. And we're working with the Ministry of Social Services. We're also in touch with REACH in case school programs and lunch programs. If schools closed down at the beginning of the COVID, we worked closely to ensure that the lunch program was maintained, and we will continue to do that should that come to fruition where we have to provide that. So we're continuing to work with all of our partners in order to ensure our vulnerable populations' needs are met.
Thank you, Ms. Harlock. So now I'll just ask Mr. Lacey. I mentioned earlier that there'll be reports coming to exec committee in terms of our third quarter financial, which will give us the update on COVID. But I would like Mr. Lacey just to talk about our Regina Economic Recovery Grant Program.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So I think council members are likely aware that in July, council approved a Regina Economic Recovery Grant Program, and it was really targeted at helping businesses who are looking at to either reshape their services or how they deliver services to their customers that have been impacted because of the public health orders or COVID. So it was a matching grant program, and it was really in two phases. Phase one were grants of up to $5,000, and phase two are grants up to $25,000, which we are opening up phase two. We're projecting here in the middle of December. So to date, there's been 127 grants provided of just under $300,000. And I think the one other thing I would just leave with you, if you go to our city website and you look up Regina Economic Grant Program, there's about 2 or 3 videos there of owners who have kind of provided their perspective on the application of this funding and how they've used that funding to reshape some of the reshape their business and the delivery of that business, to get a sense of how some businesses have used this funding.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. And now I'd just ask Ms. Folk to talk about, we always say it's our most important asset, and that's our employees. So she'll talk about employee health and safety and some of the actions we've taken to protect the safety of our employees.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters. Of course, our 2,800 employees work tirelessly day in and out to provide programs and services to our citizens that they rely on every day. Throughout the pandemic, our top priority has been their health and safety, as well as that with our community. We've worked in partnership with our unions and associations, as well as leaders across the organization and the Saskatchewan Health Authority, to ensure that we were putting many measures in place that include putting increased cleaning protocols in place, physical distancing, physical barriers, as well as changing work schedules and rotations, especially in our operating areas. As you can imagine, with over 60 lines of business, each area operates differently and has unique requirements. Important that we make sure we're being very thoughtful to continue to provide those services, as well as protecting our employees. Through the pandemic, and I know it's been reported throughout the nation about wellness and mental health. Mental health and wellness is critical for our organization. We've had a mental health strategy for our employees in place since 2016, and we've just launched Wellness in the Workplace virtual sessions for employees to ensure that they're taking care of themselves so they can take care of the community at large. We've been closely following the Reopen Saskatchewan plan, and where feasible, having our employees, where they're able to work from home, continue to do so. That was a decision that we took in the summer to maintain employees working from home wherever feasible and possible. So throughout the summer, we had about 150 managers and directors come back to the workforce. With the increased number of cases within our community over the last week, we've started to make efforts to return those employees back to working from home where they can. Now, to put that in perspective, that represents just over 27% of our population. So, of course, the other 70% of our workforce is out working in the community on a daily basis. We're continuing to work with the Saskatchewan Health Authority, our unions, our associations, and our leaders across the organization to make sure we're putting measures in place that not only comply with what's outlined in the Reopen Saskatchewan plan, but in many cases exceeds those requirements. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to close off the update, also in Ms. Folk's area is our citizen experience communications piece. Throughout this, we have taken great efforts to make sure that we have communicated with the public. We've used social media. We've done some paid advertising to make sure that people understand the importance of, it all started out with physical distancing, and then of course we moved to masks. It's been really important that we make sure that citizens of Regina know the importance of protecting health so that we can see through the other side of the pandemic. And just, hats off, there's a whole, group of directors behind ourselves that have had to, at times, respond very quickly to make changes. I know that Mayor Masters was just in a call with other city mayors and some provincial representatives, and we've said, the more advance notice you can give us, the more time we have to be able to plan. And it's important. These decisions do usually get made in a hurry. But if they're able to give us advance notice, we appreciate it because it allows us to be able to respond and make sure that we can communicate effectively with the public. But with that, we'll take any questions that council may have.
Thank you. The floor would be open for questions from councilors. Councilor
Thank you.
Bresciani. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. You have the staff, the leadership, Mr. Holden and the whole team. This started in March of last year and you haven't dropped the ball since. When you look at everything that's been done, I appreciate the hearing from every director. And, we've been kind of walking the beat slowly as we go, and we're hearing what's out there and adapting quickly. And I'm glad that was raised that, sometimes we were given very short notice to adapt. So I hope that changes, especially as our numbers rise. I want to also say thank you for being proactive with the winter grant. When we're closing down our inside facilities, now we are actually looking at the outside and seeing what else we can be done and involving the community, which I think is absolutely key. People are wanting this. They want more things to do for the mental and the physical wellness, for sure. I'd like to ask, have we connected with tourism at all to help us work with any of this for the winter strategy, anything like that, where they've been a part to try and advertise or help explore opportunities for this winter motion that was brought forward a year ago, but some of these other winter activities. Through the chair.
So, Mayor Masters, I'll start, and then I might ask Ms. Horlick to add. Obviously, through EDR and Tourism Regina, we have constant communications in terms of what are the opportunities and how can we promote them. Obviously, REAL is looking at a number of opportunities in terms of what can happen on their site. And we do have, agencies that come together. It includes Tourism Saskatchewan as well. So on a regular basis, and then of course we include the bids as well, both the warehouse bid and the downtown bid. So there are conversations about how can we, activate spaces, how can we create opportunities, and at the end of the day, we are a winter city, and are we able to create new and exciting opportunities and even create something that might be an ongoing new winter activity or festival for the community. I'm not sure if Ms. Horlick has anything to add.
Ms. Horlick?
Nothing, Mr. Holden got it all. We are in constant conversations with our partners so that we can leverage and maximize the opportunities for our citizens.
Thank you, through the chair. So do we know when we'll hear more about some of these events upcoming, as we know that people are excited for any of these other more events or things like that? People getting, and I think it's about bringing the joy and the hope and getting people excited about things. Do we have any timelines around some of these coming forward, through the chair?
So through Mayor Masters, I think some of these things are just in the final planning stages, I'll say. And of course, with the weather being cold now, I think we're at a point where some of these announcements will come, and I think they'll be very exciting. The other caution, of course, is we have to keep in mind the potential restrictions that may be put in place as COVID numbers increase. So I think there's a lot of discussion. I think there's announcements just about ready to be made, but there's a bit of a cautious approach just to make sure we don't make announcements and then have to pull them back.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in balance. The last thing is, I think, just regards to the staff that are out in the front lines. They risk that every day, and we just really can't say thank you enough for ensuring that they're providing the services for the city of Regina. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bresciani. Councilor Shaw?
I have 3 questions and a comment. First of all, thank you very much. I will tell you, sitting on the opposite side, now that I'm in here, it's a whole different, I get a better sense of what you guys have been going through now that we're in here, and I'm hoping to the citizens of Regina will appreciate that a little bit more. Even, like I said, it's just a lot different world back here. My first question, riding has gone down by 18% in transportation. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct.
That's correct, okay. Now, you talked about the swimming has been canceled for the Learn to Swim program. Have you had anything to do with the competitive programs? Do you know what's going on with there? What is the future of that, for the chair?
Through you, Madam Chairman. So as per the regulations, if you're under 18, then you are allowed to train and do those sorts of things. So we are working with the different user groups. We have suspended just for the training until December 3rd, just to allow pool space reallocation with respect to group demands to comply with the new restrictions. So hopefully after this December 3rd, tomorrow, we'll be able to move forward and have a better schedule based on the new regulations.
Okay, thank you. One last question. Now, Councillor Briciani talked about tourism Regina and stuff. Has there been any talk with the Hotel Association, maybe doing packages to, like we said, get excited about coming to Regina and shopping package with hotels or restaurants? Any discussion over that? And could we have the chair?
Through you, Madam Chairman. So we do meet, as Mr. Holden said, with EDR, Tourism, and the Hotels Association to look at different programs and things like that. We're always in constant conversations with respect to how do we promote Regina. So I can't speak for the Hotels Association directly, whether or not they have that in the works. I'm not sure if Ms. Shaley, who sits on that committee, has any additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct. Tourism Regina is working with the Hotels Association. There will be promotions that will be in the community after Christmas, promoting both our programs as well as our local restaurants. So that work is underway right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw, anything further?
No.
You're good. Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. Through the chair. My first question is for Mr. Onright and his team, and specifically, I want to know what's in our poop at Everett or at the wastewater treatment facility. So the U of S partnered with the city of Saskatoon to test the effluent, and they effectively predicted an upsurge in COVID. Are we partnering with scientists here to work on the same analysis about COVID rates in the community?
Through your worship, yes, we are. We're partnering with the U of R. U of R, we're supplying the samples to U of R. They are analyzing the samples. They are about 2 months behind where Saskatoon is, and that's primarily due to Saskatoon getting their program up and running, getting their processes dealt with. And that information then goes to SHA. EPCOR, who runs our wastewater treatment plant, has put provisions in place to deal with COVID in terms of staffing. And that's a bit of what Saskatoon is doing right now. They're taking some of that information to help them determine what to do with their staffing levels, how to offset shifts. That has been in place since March with EPCOR. That is a company-wide process for them as they have operations throughout North America. So we're in a very good place there.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I believe this is to Mr. Lacey and his team. Many businesses are trying to activate outdoor spaces, partly to deal with the restrictions, but also just to kind of engage this winter city philosophy. Would our business grant program cover in these applications the cost of permits that might be required to activate these outdoor spaces?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the program typically focuses on items that would be incurred to construct those outdoor spaces, the fabric, framework, materials, workmanship, whatever would be needed. I don't think the program was initially contemplated. Clearly, it did not contemplate payment of property taxes, et cetera, or other fees to the city. So without looking specifically at the program criteria in front of me, I would say the program was more focused at those other pieces. And typically, that's where the larger cost is at.
Thank you. Through the chair, when COVID first erupted, the provincial government suspended the ability of landlords to evict tenants due to financial hardship. Are we seeing pressure to invoke these changes again? Is this coming from the community? Are we seeing hardship in the community as a result of the economic circumstances? What's your sense of that conversation?
So through you, Mayor Masters, I know that a lot of the initial conversations prior to that decision being made came from the nonprofit groups, and I know Regina was quite vocal in terms of putting that proposal in front of the province for consideration, and of course, they took some action. I would ask Ms. Horlick if she has any information as to whether that is starting to surface again, obviously with the weather getting colder and the pandemic continuing.
Thank you. Ms. Hart?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So yes, the groups are going forward to the province to ask them to continue to review the income support programs, because it really comes down to an income issue with respect to this. So as Mr. Holden said, those groups are forming again, and they're going to the province asking for some work around this issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair, it'll be a few weeks, I understand it, before we'll see the effects, positive or negative, of the additional restrictions. In the event they're not successful and the province doesn't change its approach, have you seen any signals from the government or from SHA that if municipalities decided to be more proactive and go down the road of enacting our own more restrictive measures, would they overturn that decision again?
Through you, Mayor Masters, so our conversations that we've had at an administrative level with the province have really been, we're trying to protect the health and safety of citizens. Obviously, from our perspective, we're trying to protect the health and safety of our employees and obviously citizens that access our services. It really is about trying to balance the economic activity and, maintaining the economy of the community. I think if council came forward and said, we want to take further action, and it ended up in, shutting down certain aspects of our economy, whether that be restaurants, retail, whatever, obviously the province would have to react to that. I can't really anticipate how they would. But I think the reason that they are taking such a cautious, measured approach is they're trying to balance that very delicate balance in terms of, we want to make sure that people are healthy, but we also want to make sure that we are, continuing to have an economy. And, if people lose jobs, then of course that has a whole nother impact on some of the other issues that we've been talking about in terms of mental health and some of the social pressures that we may put on people.
Thank you. Through the chair, in the federal government's update, in the provincial government's throne speech, do you see any additional supports for residents, for businesses, or for the municipality, financial or otherwise?
So through you, Mayor Masters, in the throne speech and of course in the recent federal discussions, there has not been the announcement of any further programs. However, there is a commitment from both the feds and the province to continue to monitor the economic situation. And I think as we move into the new year, depending on exactly which way the pandemic shifts, the arrival of a vaccine, there is an indication that obviously if programs need to continue, that the federal government, who is the best layer of government to put those kinds of programs in place would be prepared to do so. But there's no firm announcements or commitments at this time.
Thank you. Final question through the chair. Would there be a willingness in your, based on what you've heard from the SHA, to have an official come to council or even to executive committee as a delegate and allow us to ask them questions in public?
So through you, Mayor Masters, so today we actually were trying to get a representative from SHA to come and answer questions. Unfortunately, the demands on the senior officials at this point are extreme, and we just weren't able to make that happen. So at a future point in time, or at a time when we bring another update, if we can arrange that, then I think they'd definitely be prepared to come and do that in a public setting. And if that creates some challenges just in terms of timing, I know they'd be more than willing to do that with council in a private setting if it was just a matter of scheduling and convenience in terms of arranging the time.
Thanks. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Stanczyk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I want to thank the executive leadership team and all the city staff as well for all of the work that they're doing during this very difficult time. I do have a question about if there's been any impact on staff in terms of the new provincial restrictions, if the city had to issue any layoffs or reduce hours of staff, and if so, if they were eligible for federal wage replacement programs.
So through you, Mayor Masters, so the city being a government itself doesn't qualify for all of the programs that the federal government puts out. So for example, wage subsidy, we're not eligible for that. We receive support in other ways. In the first wave of the pandemic, as we moved into spring, we did make decisions to lay off some of our employees. We didn't lay off a lot of employees, but we did lay off some employees, and we did delay the recall of some of our casual staff. And then, of course, we were able to slowly bring services back online, and the majority of our staff were recalled. And we are not in a position yet where we've had to lay off staff again as a result of the pandemic. As Ms. Folk indicated, we have made adjustments, and we have more people working from home now than we did 10 days ago. But I think we've been very fortunate that we were positioned as an organization to be able to send those that can work from home. And of course, the very nature of the business that a lot of the services we provide are more or less essential in terms of maintaining sewer and water, delivering transit services, and those frontline staff have been, we've continued to employ them.
Thank you. Through the chair, another question about if we have any information at this time about the impact on small businesses or any businesses for that matter in Regina, or if we will be getting a report later on that. In particular, with the latest restrictions, I know that is putting further strain on a lot of businesses because it's almost not viable for them to continue. I had one small business owner say that it was like they're bleeding to death because the restrictions are such that they cannot. It's really hard, it makes it harder to make ends meet. So I know that might be some time before we have the full understanding of the impact, but I do know that there have been some businesses in Regina that have shut their doors permanently. And do we have any estimate of what that is?
So through you, Mayor Masters, so you raise a really good question. It's a question that has been in discussion amongst our administration and with some of our partners. So for example, EDR, the Regina Chamber of Commerce. I think there is an opportunity to bring those groups together and have that conversation. Obviously, from the city's perspective, a good indicator for us is the fact that commercial property taxes get paid. And surprisingly, we have more or less, we're right in line with where we were a year ago. What we don't know, though, is, the means that people had to take to be able to pay those property taxes. So we do know that in some instances, people have borrowed to be able to pay property taxes. I think there's a number of businesses that have managed to get through this year. I think the real challenge will move into 2021. And are the challenges that businesses have faced, in particular small businesses, are those sustainable? So I think as we move forward, that's work that we can look to EDR and some of the other entities to bring forward a report to council that would give you that information as best we can.
And just one last question to the mayor. So in terms of the economic recovery grants, I haven't seen the criteria for them, but do they target those businesses that are in greatest need?
Mayor Masters, I'll have Mr. Lacey address that one.
Mr. Lacey?
Yes, thank you. So basically any business that's non-residential qualifies for the program. So it's a very wide open program. As far as criteria, the business obviously needs to be located within the city boundaries. There is a weekly intake process, and we went to a weekly intake process, one, so that the number of applications, if we had a large volume, could be manageable. But secondly, as the pandemic has continued, businesses evaluate their needs and make changes, and so we wanted to ensure that, if something happened 2 months later, they wanted to make an additional change to their business, they could come and apply through that weekly process. And so when the applications come in, there are some program criteria that we have set out. In the event there are more applications that come in than we have the ability to fund. And so that criteria is in the policy, and there's about 9 different criteria that we assess against. The reality is that because of the number of applications we're seeing come in, I would say anybody that actually qualifies under the criteria to date has been getting some level of funding if we deem them to be eligible, meet the eligibility requirements, and meet those program criteria requirements. And the policy is on the website. It's publicly available for anybody that wants to see the policy and the criteria that are applied to the program.
Fine, just to follow up on that, so through the chair, but are there any, maybe I should ask the question, are there any businesses that wouldn't be eligible, such as the big box retail stores that are already making profits during COVID?
Yeah. So that was something that we talked about and went out and surveyed the business community and came back and informed council about. And there was a general consensus that all businesses contribute to our economy. And so there was no exclusion with respect to size of business or the number of employees. The reality is under the criteria, should it get to a point where we need to choose businesses most in need, obviously businesses that are not as impacted by COVID or not impacted at all would fall to the bottom of the list in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Skidnia.
Thank you. My question is, what has the city been doing to address increased opioid overdoses that have occurred in tandem with COVID-19, and what can we be doing as overdoses continue to increase, especially on an emergency basis, such as providing funding for additional naloxone kits?
So through you, Mayor Masters, I'll start, and then I might ask Ms. Horlick or Mr. Onright to provide some additional information. So in terms of the city and our direct role through our Regina Fire and Protective Services Department, we obviously respond when calls come in, and of course that's usually when there's an overdose in progress, obviously. We have about 300 plus firefighters. I think over 100 of them are trained paramedics, and of course they've all been trained to administer, now it's escaping me.
Naloxone.
Thank you. Right, naproxen. So that's our immediate response. We're a partner around the Human Services Partnership table. which is a group of agencies, and this has existed for quite some time. The Regina Police Service are around that table, the City of Regina is around that table, the Ministry of Health is around that table. There's mental health represented around the table, social services, public and separate school boards. So all of the agencies and entities that, come into contact on a frequent basis with families and individuals, and of course, some of those families and individuals are in unfortunate circumstances. So that's the role that we play. And of course, we're involved in, a winter strategy in terms of making sure that, people that are out on the street have a place to go. Through our Community Initiatives Fund, we support agencies like Mobile Crisis, etc. So I think there's a number of things that we do as a city. I think it's important to reinforce that, the city doesn't have the direct responsibility for that. And whenever I say that, I always feel bad saying that, but at the end of the day, because the people that are experiencing those very situations are residents in our community. So obviously it's important to us and it matters, but we really need the other levels of government, federally and provincially, because it really takes funding to be able to address these concerns. And it's not a direct responsibility of the City of Regina in terms of we just don't have the financial flexibility to provide the level of funds needed to make the impact that I think is needed in the community to make a difference. And I might have Ms. Horlick to add further to that.
Ms. Horlick?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll start, and then I'm sure Mr. Onright can explain how fire deals with these issues. So yes, as Mr. Holden indicated, it's not our clear mandate to be doing that. Through the Community and Safety Wellbeing Plan that we're doing and working on, we'll be exploring this topic. It'll be one of those topics that will be explored in the plan, and there'll be a memo coming out regarding that plan and an information session for council, because I think it's important that the new councillors understand the plan that we're moving forward with, because the existing councillors from before knew about this plan. As far as naloxone kits, we did work with, we've never been asked for funding for those kits. We did work, though, with health regarding our recreation centers to see if that was someplace that we should be distributing. But it was deemed that it's not a high priority for health because it's not one of the hot spots. And so it wasn't a priority area to be looking at for those distribution of those kits. So I might ask Mr. Onright to speak to what fire does around this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Harlock. Mr. Onright?
Thank you, through your worship. So fire's involvement, we have a mutual aid agreement with SHA. So that agreement has fire support services to both EMS. Regina Police Services are involved. And I think, of our discussions over the last 2 weeks, one thing that is being discussed with Western Canadian cities, and this is through our fire department, is they're wrestling with is the drug overdose issue in all Western cities, what they're seeing today, in direct relationship to COVID, or is it just because there's a bigger drug problem and more influx of drugs coming in? But fire definitely is at the table. They do support it. As Mr. Holden indicated, we have 100 paramedics on our fire department, and all of our new recruits coming in are registered paramedics. So moving forward, that number continues to increase, and we continue to work very closely with SHA on this particular issue.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. So that all sounds great from a long-term perspective. If a community organization identified a need for additional naloxone kits in this as quickly as possible, what would be the best route for them? Would there be city funding available for them to distribute these kits? Should they go through the SHA because they already have kits available?
Through my masters, I think if there are nonprofit organizations, their first point of contact would be to reach out to the health authority. And then, of course, if they can't get support there, then I think there is an opportunity to have a conversation with the city. But the health authority has been very supportive every time that we've reached out and had a need to make sure that they're able to work with us and get people what they need.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Skidiak. Councillor Fundura.
I have to be careful how I address you now, I guess, eh? To you, Madam Chair, to the administration, a lot of the businesses are looking to go outdoors because of what's happening. Could we look at waiving the permits? Through you.
So through you, Mayor Masters, obviously there was the example in the media over the weekend in terms of, a small business that's getting very creative in terms of finding a solution that makes them more viable or sustainable through COVID. It's really important that, we're encouraging people to go through the permitting process. The decision to not move forward and require businesses to pay permit fees would be a decision of council. To Mr. Lacey's point, the permit fee for a tent structure is approximately $150 a month. I can tell you that we're trying to be flexible in terms of being able to support small businesses. So, if, example, someone is putting up 2 tent structures, our staff are looking at, okay, how can we kind of look at this and apply a single permit fee instead of 2 permit fees. So we're going to try and be as creative as they are in terms of being flexible to try to support people. But we do need people to pay the fees. The fees are minimal. And they are cost recovery, because if you remember, the fees that we put in place are the cost of our staff going out, doing the inspections, and proceeding with approvals. So, but if council wanted to pursue that, then definitely that's something that you could bring forward.
Okay, thank you. I would want to follow up on that. I do understand through you, Madam Chair. But as you mentioned, the certain business that they're saying that they didn't realize that they have to. Is there something that, our permits are there. Everyone knows that you need to take a permit, anything you do, right? So is there something, an oversight on someone, let's say the business or us, not going forward as people getting desperate doing different things, trying to innovate and help themselves to survive? So the question would be is the permits are there, people can reach out to them, they can see them. So what happened in this instance where someone says to me, they didn't know? How do we fix that, or does it need to be fixing? How do we do this?
So through you, Mayor Masters, obviously through our communication efforts, what we put on our website, what we put out there in social media, if people are making renovations, additions, then obviously we would encourage people to, first of all, go to the website. There's lots of information that would indicate whether or not you actually need a permit from the city or not. It is an honor system, right? Not just because something starts being constructed either in a residential home or a commercial business, if it happens without the city's knowledge, then it can happen without the city's knowledge. There could be risk then for the individual residents or the property owner in terms of the reason the permits are there are to make sure that any additions or construction is being done to code and that it's safe. So at the end of the day, if somebody builds a tent structure, puts an addition, and something happens and it's not built to code and it doesn't comply, then obviously there's liability. And in that case, without a permit, the liability is 100% on the property owner and the homeowner. And that's why the city, I think, at times can be seen as, being obstructive. We're not. We're actually making sure that we're protecting the health and safety of everyone involved. And, I think there is a takeaway here is that businesses are getting kind of innovative in terms of pursuing options so that they can remain viable. And I think, the restrictions that were put on in terms of reducing the number of people that can sit at a table and increasing the distance from 2 meters to 3 meters has put additional pressures on a lot of businesses. So, our takeaway is to make sure that we're putting out some additional messaging through our social media that just encourages people, if they're unsure, and reach out and contact the city, and we'll be able to support people and walk them through whatever permitting process would be required.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I have a question on the, to you, Chair, on the business classification on the numbers of grants awarded. And you have one line here that says other services, and the number of grants awarded was 28. Can I hear what are those others, if I may, please, Chair?
Mr. Lacey?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Masters. So those categories are categories we actually have on the application form, and so they self-select the category themselves. So that's businesses that have selected the other services. But I believe Ms. Bryden's on the line, and she might have a little bit more detail about the type of, some examples of the type of businesses that self-selected other, if she's available. Ms. Bryden?
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Through you, Madam Mayor. So yes, as Mr. Lacey indicated, when businesses go through the application process, they would select which category they fall into. Quite a few are those ones that selected other were some hair salons. We've had some of the nonprofits and just various other not unusual, but businesses that didn't see themselves within the main categories outlined.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further, Councilman? All right. Seeing no further request for comments or questions, we have a motion and a seconder. Could I get a call to vote to receive and file the city manager's report?
Councilor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councilor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councilor Shaw.
In favor.
Councilor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councilor Moore.
In favor.
Councilor Findura.
In favor.
Councilor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councilor Stevens.
In favor.
Councilor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councilor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I need someone to move for adjournment. I have Councilwoman Bresciani. A seconder, please. Councilor Hawkins, and then a voice vote is phone. All in favor? Thank you. That will complete this particular session of council. I would just ask if council could, since it's 30, if we could meet in the Schneider boardroom. We just want to go over a few kind of housekeeping things for Mr. Nickel. We've received some questions from councilor about some housekeeping items. So if we could, we'll have a little chat in there.